All right, so now we're going to look at a cross section through the spinal cord. And so this guy right here, as you can see, like this would be your spinal cord. This is the posterior surface, so this would be our posterior median sulcus here. Then this would be the anterior surface, so this is our anterior median fissure. And this is as if we've like sliced through it, like bread slices. All right, so this is going to be a horizontal or transverse section through our spinal cord. So we're looking at a horizontal or transverse plane over here. So I'm going to focus mostly on this top area here because we can see a little bit more. So a couple of things to notice, as we said, are that this top area here, this is going to be the posterior area. This is the posterior median sulcus. And this down part here, this is the anterior median fissure. So the best way to figure out which is posterior and which is anterior is to look at the nerve roots. Because this guy right here, this big, like, you see this swelling along this nerve root, this is a ganglion. And only the dorsal or posterior root has a ganglion. So when I'm talking about the spinal cord in general, I'm going to use the terms posterior and dorsal interchangeably, and I'm going to use the terms anterior and ventral interchangeably. And on your lab practical or your quizzes or your test, you can use either term. And so this is going to be the dorsal root. These are the little rootlets. They come together to make the dorsal root, and this is the dorsal root ganglion. This is the ventral rootlets, which come together to make the ventral root. And together, the ventral root and the dorsal root combine to form the spinal nerve. Now, after this, on other models, you can see the rami of the spinal nerve start to split off, but it's not shown on this model. So you would have a posterior ramus going to the back, an anterior ramus going to the front, and two rami communicantes going to the sympathetic trunk, but it's not shown on this model. All right, so that would be the same on the other side. Now, the other things that I'm going to want to look at here are going to be the gray matter and the white matter. So notice that the white matter is on the outside and the gray matter is on the inside, which is kind of the opposite of most of the brain, right? The cortex of the brain is gray matter and it's on the outside, and then we have a lot of the white matter on the inside. And so this is a little bit different, but so remember in the spinal cord that the white matter is on the outside. White matter, remember, is made up of myelinated axons. And so these are actually going to be tracks. They're going to be running ascending tracks. They're either going to be running up the spinal cord to the brain, or descending tracks might be running down from the brain to the muscles. So these are going to be axons that are running to and from the brain. And so that's the white matter. And so we call the little areas of white matter, like each area, sometimes they might call them like columns, but our book calls it a funiculus. It's a technical term here. All right, so we're going to have, on either side, you have a lateral funiculus, which is the white matter, so that's 23. And then you have an anterior funiculus, which will be 22, which is this anterior area here. Remember, 19 is going to be the anterior median fissure. And then the posterior funiculus is going to be up here. That's going to be 24. And then the posterior median sulcus is here for 20. Now in the front here, there's going to be a little bit of a connecting area in between the two sides, and that's going to be the white commissure. And this is going to be the anterior white commissure or anterior white commissure. It's going to be kind of like right under here. And so that's going to be connecting sort of the two sides of the spinal cord. Now we have the gray matter here, and it looks a little bit like a butterfly shaped to me, or an H. And so this part here that connects them through the middle is going to be the gray commissure, right? So we had the white commissure down here and the gray commissure up here. And then in the very middle, you see this little dot. That's actually a hole, and this hole is actually filled with cerebrospinal fluid. And so this is called the central canal of the spinal cord, and it's filled with cerebrospinal fluid. So now on either side, we've got a couple little areas of this gray matter. So the gray matter in the posterior part of the spinal cord is called the posterior horn. The gray matter in the lateral part of the spinal cord is called the lateral horn, and the gray matter in the anterior part of the spinal cord is called the anterior horn. So posterior horn, lateral horn, anterior horn. Then we have posterior funiculus, lateral funiculus, anterior funiculus. So those should hopefully be pretty easy to remember.